Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Thursday. How are you? Are you ready? Boy, this week goes quick, doesn't it? Can't we have a 4-day work week every week? Wouldn't that be great? I mean, come on. Let's be honest with you here. All right. Well, today we've got a big show lined up for you here. In the first part of the show, we're going to be talking with the folks at Cook Inlet Counselling here on the Kenai. We're going to talk with them here. Charlie Simmons is joining us and Amanda Hanson as well to talk about their mission, where they came from, how's it get started. And of course, the big thing is their big gala, which is happening here in October. It's their big fundraising gala, and we're going to be talking about that here in just a second with them. In hour 2 of the show today, we'll be joined by Bernadette Wilson, who is, one of the plethora of candidates that are running for governor. I mean, what is it? 10, 12, 15, 30, 100. I don't know how many people are running so far, but there's a lot. And we're going to be talking with Bernadette again here about her vision for the state and where things are going and what's going on with, little bits and pieces of everything. So it's going to be a full show today as we continue to get things going on. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to be joined by Dr. John Lott from the Crime Prevention Research Center. You'll be able to find them at over there at crimeresearch.org, and we'll be talking with him for our Firearms Friday discussion about the issues surrounding pretty much everything related to firearms and the Second Amendment and mental health and more stuff, all coming up again on tomorrow's program starting at 6 a.m. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff out of the way. So without further ado, let's sit down and get started with this. We'll jump over here. Sitting in the green room with us right now is Charlie Simmons and Amanda Hanson, again with the Cook Inlet Counselling. And we're going to get a little bit of details on where they come from, what a little bit of the mission of the organization. And then we're going to talk about, again, the big thing is their big fundraising gala happening in October. And we welcome them both to the program. Good morning, folks. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for coming on board. All right. Well, let's get cracking on this and talk a little bit about it. First and foremost, Charlie, you're the executive director, and Mandy, you're one of the counselors there. So let's start off with Charlie. Charlie, let's talk for just a little bit here about what exactly is Cook Inlet Counselling. What do they do? How do they get started? Give us some background here. Let's see what you have to say.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Cook Inlet Counselling has been around on the peninsula for almost 50 years. This December will be 50 years that we've been providing services in Kenai and Homer for all the surrounding areas. At Cook Inlet Counselling, we have historically really focused a lot on substance use disorder. But since I've been the executive director, we do a lot of mental health work. We know that they just come together. It's really impossible to separate those two. So we provide services to youth and adults. Some people will come in without a substance use issue in their life, and we'll work with them. Some people have both. Some people have just substance use. But that's really the population we work with. We're a community nonprofit, so we provide services to, you don't have to have a way to pay to come in. We want to provide services to everybody who walks in the door. Many people are Medicaid covered, some have private insurance, some are self-pay. We just want to make it possible for everybody who walks into the door to get good, high quality services. More recently, because we know, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been working in the substance use disorder field for about 18 years now. And we've always known, we primarily use cognitive behavioral kind of strategies, which is really important, right? People have 50,000 thoughts a day and we just believe them all. And that's a problem for a lot of people when the thinking errors begin. And I just think that they're true. The cognitive behavioral therapy is really important. But we've always known that there's other stuff going on. And we know so much more about that today. And at our agency, all of our counselors and I are trained in brain spotting. It's a nervous system processing. It gets deep into the health distress that underlies substance use disorders and resolves that, the things underneath that create that irritability that people are trying to resolve, the lack of connection that people experience that they're trying to resolve with the substances. And when we can get to that and resolve that health distress, then people have just a much better chance of living a high quality life. And that's really innovative. There's not a lot of people doing work in that way. And all of our people at Cook Inlet Counselling are trained to do this work in this way. So we're finding just really, really exceptional outcomes for people the way we're doing the work now. And so I love that we can provide that kind of high quality, innovative care for people that it's often reserved for just the people that have the best insurance or the most money.
Right.
That's just not the case here. So.
Right. Well, I was just having a conversation with my wife and my daughters the other day, over the weekend, in fact, about, the ripple effect and the effect of mental health in society, and how, we've come to address a lot more of these. We've really, there's less of a stigma now around a lot of mental health care, but that the ripple effects of those things, especially untreated, are broad and vast. Our conversation started about homelessness and some other things, and again, substance abuse and things like that, and going all the way up into, of course, we were again tomorrow we're going to talk about some of the violence and the shootings and things like that. I mean, there's mental health aspects in most of the things that we do in America these days, and luckily it seems like that stigma has kind of dropped, but at least we are trying to address it. And Chris, give me your thoughts on, kind of the overall factor that mental health plays in some of the problems that we have in America today. And then Mandy, you can give us your perspective as well as a counselor. But Charles, let's start with you.
Yeah, the research says that 80% of people in our nation have experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. The numbers on anxiety and depression have just skyrocketed over the last 5 years or so. And it is left unresolved, then it tends to come out with what we see as symptoms. And so the symptoms of anxiousness or depression, PTSD symptoms are the sleeplessness, hypervigilance, and we just can't operate. Our nervous system loves to be in a state, that's called safety. We love safety. That's where we can connect with other people. That's where we can connect with ourselves. And if my nervous system doesn't feel safe in my body, then it loves to jump to this thing that we commonly call fight or flight, hypervigilance, hyperactive, and we're not thinking very well there. That's a survival mode, and we're very reactive there. And so people will get forced into this fight or flight, and then they do these things, they act out in ways, and then later they come back into the safety, and they're like, why did I do that? I don't know why I did that. If fight or flight isn't doing it for people, our nervous system will automatically choose this shutdown. We dissociate, depression lives there, lots of things live there. So the nervous system's always trying to choose this thing that's going to be best for my survival. And when we have a lot of people in our environment experiencing anxiousness and depression, this is happening in all of our relationships if it's left unprocessed. And really it processes and resolves in relationship, But we are a society today that is more and more disconnected. Less and less often we have families sitting at dinner talking about homelessness. Our social media way of connecting just doesn't do it for people. It's not the kind of connection that our brain needs.
Ironically, we were all sitting around the living room watching YouTube videos about certain things and having discussions. It wasn't quite the dinner table, but at least we were doing it together. It was a together exercise. Mandy, again, we're looking at this and we see this as a current, that there's a crisis point for a lot of these things, and a lot of those issues come back to mental health. And I've said many things. Again, we were talking about homelessness, and I've said this is an issue that's so complex. There is no simple one-word bullet point answer to any of this. Obviously, mental health, substance abuse, those are some big precursors or big, triggers inside that problem. But, talk to us about what you've seen in the process, working with people, and maybe, give us some hope as to things that can be fixed in this kind of situation.
Sure. I feel incredibly blessed to be able to get to serve the population that we serve at Cook Inlet Counseling. And while it's true, the stigma is less, it is still very much alive. And I think the important thing to know is just that there is hope, and people do recover, and people get better, and there's treatment available. There's hope. There's a way out. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, again, I mentioned earlier, we seem to be less stigmatized. And of course, we've come from different generational feelings. Somebody made a comment of something like, for the silent generation and for boomers and even into Gen X, the idea of mental health treatment was rub some dirt on it, kind of thing, and walk it off kind of thing. And we're seeing some changes to that, where people are now addressing it to realize, okay, there is something deeper than just gut it through. My generation, I'm Gen X, but my generation was kind of rub it off, do what you need to do. You gut through it, you work through it. But we have a whole different kind of mentality over the last couple generations of, where people are kind of more in touch with their feelings and understanding that this is not just me feeling bad about myself. Maybe there's some underlying causes. Mandy?
Yeah, I'm kind of from the same generation, as far as certainly don't talk about anything going on with your feelings. So we've come a long ways in that. And I think providing just a safe environment where people don't feel judged, and where people can sit down and be authentic and open up about what's really going on in their heart and their mind, it opens up an opportunity for a new level of healing to occur.
Cook Inlet Counseling is in the Kenai area, and again, providing mental health empowerment and healing and relief and treatment for both Kenai, and they have offices in Kenai and in Homer. We're talking right now with Charlie Simmons and Mandy Hanson, and we're going to continue with them here in a second, but we are up against the break. And so when we come back, we're going to talk with them about their upcoming gala, which is going to take, you got time, it's going to take place in early October, but we wanted to give you guys plenty of lead time to be able to participate and help out and do things as we continue our discussions here in just a moment with Charlie and Mandy. We will be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We continue with more in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Charlie and his on the website, it's Charlie, and you put in Charles here. I just want to make sure you're okay with me calling you Charlie. Sorry about that.
It's just fine. No,
yeah.
That's fine.
It's all good. Charlie is more comfortable for me. I just feel a little too. Oh, I've talked to Charles. He's
It feels a little smart. Yeah, I agree.
No, but I mean, I am amazed, because we see, and the homelessness thing keeps coming back up, because that's something we tried to tackle here on the program, not in terms of trying to find a solution, but in talking about some of the causality, and and so that's one of the big issues that's on my mind when it comes to this. And of course, we just talked a couple 3-4 weeks ago. We talked to Michelle Overstreet from my house in Wasilla, Matsu. She's the one that deals with homeless youth and for youth with drug addiction and mental health issues and homelessness in the Matsu. And so we were having these conversations. So it's kind of been on my mind, it's been on my heart. But again, I am pleased to see that overall we are talking more about it. I don't necessarily understand it. I have never really suffered from depression or things like that, but I've dealt with a lot of people that have, and it's something that, I guess some of us that were, again, coming from that Gen X that, rub some dirt on it generation, we're still trying to come to grips with exactly how does it help? What does it do? And how can we understand it better, Charlie?
Mm-hmm. So really is the question around like the parts, the biopsychosocial pieces of the homelessness and substance use.
Yeah, I mean, not just overall. I mean, to me, that's what I keep coming back to, that because that's what I've been thinking about. But overall, I mean, again, we're seeing a whole culture where more people are embracing the idea of, whole body wellness and everything else. And I think that's good, even though, again, I haven't suffered from it and I don't necessarily always understand it. I understand that at least working through it is good for folks who aren't like me. Right. You know what I mean? But those of us who, those who are on the outside looking in are trying to understand, how the process works and is there a positive and all those kind of things, is there, as Mandy said, there is hope, right? That's the thing, to have hope that we can get through to the other side of this. Yeah.
We call the way we look at substance use disorder is biopsychosocial. And that means there's biological pieces that we know play a large factor. If I come from a family where there's problematic substance use and I start using, it's more likely that I'll have problem substance use. If I start when I'm a teenager in my developing brain, it's more likely that later in life I'll have problem use. If I don't use substances until after the age of 25, I have less than a 1% chance of ever developing problems.
Right.
So there's some big pieces biologically and then
learned behavior, right? Learned behavior kind of thing, right?
Yep. So I'm seeing it in my world. This is how you manage the world. Don't feel that. Just drink this.
Right.
And I came from that too. Like I remember I was 12 years old and my dad was like, "Boy, it's time I teach you how to drink tequila right." And I was really offended that he didn't think I knew how to do that right. But that was just the system.
Well, you learned him, right? We taught him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's just the system. It was just everywhere. So there's this biological piece, sociological pieces, and then psychological pieces.
Right.
And if I feel uneasy inside of myself and I can use a substance to make that go away, then I'm really likely to do that again. And substances literally rewire how the brain operates.
Right.
So it changes. So then I start, if I'm starting using over time, there's just a natural course of action that the brain is going to take if I'm using substances. I say it like this. I get to go into, one of the things I get to do is often go into high schools and talk with youth and teach them about drugs in the brain and behavior. And I say it like this: if you're human and have a brain and you use with any consistency over any extended period of time, I can tell you what's going to happen.
Right.
The brain just naturally responds to, well, the reward pathway says, "Man, I'm good looking when I drink," or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
The reward pathway can say, "Man, that's really awesome." But the rest of the brain knows it's a poison. So it starts really trying to mitigate this poison.
It's some crazy stuff. All right. Well, we're 15 seconds out here. We're going to rejoin the radio and get started. So we'll continue on. Mandy Hanson, Charlie Simmons, Cook Inlet Counselling. Let's get back to it. Please like and share, like and follow. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Man, that guy is so mean. I don't know what I did to him, but he's so mean. All right, welcome back to the program. Hour one of our big Thursday edition of the show. We're talking with Charlie Simmons, who's the director of Cook Inlet Counseling, along with Mandy Hanson, who's a counselor over there at Cook Inlet. And Charlie, just to recap from our first segment there, Cook Inlet is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping people in Kenai, in Homer, and to deal with their, mental health issues, right? And to deal with some of the stressors and things like that of mental health. And while I know that some of the people out there, somebody in the chat room mentioned that, that some people are trying to game the system or whatever and live off the state or the federal. I mean, I understand that there are some people who have those adverse reactions, but I think, more often than not, it's just average everyday people who aren't trying to get some kind of disability diagnosis. I think it's people who just want to live a better life and be happy. You know what I mean? They're not looking to get on the dole or welfare or whatever. They just want to be able to live a normal life. That's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's plan is I want to develop a substance use problem to live off the state, that's a really bad plan.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like the best way to go to me. I mean, I'm just saying. But, I think this is a good opportunity for folks to, think about folks in their families or their communities or in their circles of influence that, may be struggling or obviously having some problems. Depression's a big deal, across the country. But there are some underlying causes. And I've known people who have worked through some of that stuff. I knew one guy who you never would have known it. But who was, kind of the one of the Pollyanna-ish, most Pollyanna-ish kind of person that I've ever known. And he said, you have no idea. He goes, I used to be so depressed, I could hardly get out of bed and go to work in the day. And he goes, I worked through it. And we never got into if he was working with somebody, counselor or whatever. He goes, I got through it. He goes, and life is much better now. But I had to tackle it head on. And that's something that I think avoidance is a big thing, right? Avoidance is a big tactic for what we've got going on. Mandy, do you see that in the people that you work with sometimes, that avoidance is the easiest way to kind of get out of recognizing that there's a problem?
I think avoidance is a part, is how people are trying to cope sometimes before they know that there are other options. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. All right, I want to talk about your upcoming gala. So, Mandy, if you want to give us some details, and then we'll go over to Charles. But tell us a little bit about the gala. It's coming up in October, right? October the 18th in Kenai at the Lone Moose Lodge. Talk to us about the gala. This is your first crack at it, right? This is the first ever that you guys are putting together. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. We are coming up on, and Charlie didn't mention this, but we're coming up on our 50th year as an organization in our community. Charlie's been our executive director for 5 years, and he's made some incredible changes in the services that we provide and the results we're getting for our clients or helping our clients achieve. And so this gala is going to be an opportunity to reach out to the community and let them know what we're doing and some of the services that we do and some of the testimony to people's experiences that have had a lot of great growth since coming into our organization. We've planned an incredible evening that'll have interactive, fun stuff for people to do. Then there will also, of course, be a lot of different games and auction and a sit-down dinner and live musical performances, even a poetry reading. And so it's October 18th. It starts at 4:00, Soldotna at Lone Moose Lodge. It is our first year doing it, and we couldn't be just more excited.
And of course, if folks, want to support, they want to, get a table, they want to buy tickets, they want to, do all those kind of things. Do they just go to the Cook Inlet Counseling.org website and get signed up there? How do they do? How do they find out more information?
Sure. I'm really glad you brought that up. Cook Inlet.
That's why they pay me the big bucks, right?
So you can pay the big bucks. CookInletCounseling.org has a link for the gala that you can go in and sign up to donate, volunteer, or book a table. We're set to go. We just need people to come now at this point. Just book a table, come, enjoy yourselves, and enjoy the evening that we put together for you guys. There's also a Facebook event. We have a Facebook page, and so you can click on a link there and easily book your table or learn more about some of the items that'll be auctioned off. That kind of information is available through our website and Facebook.
Right. And we're doing silent and outcry, or both, or one or the other, or what are you doing for auction items and things like that?
Yep. We're doing a live auction and a silent auction.
Okay. And that'll be good. Charlie, tell me a little bit about the genesis. I mean, this is your first annual. This is it's a big step, right? Because you got to bring a lot of people together. You got to make it all work. You got to make it pay. You got to make a little money. You got to, so talk to us a little bit about, the gala from your perspective and what you hope to accomplish outside of more exposure, obviously, and raising some funding.
Sure. Yeah. One, I'm infinitely grateful for Mandy's excitement about such things. If it was left up to me, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
But Charlie's not as excited about this kind of stuff. Yeah.
My strengths are in other areas. I am excited about it, but planning events is, I work with a great team, and I'm really grateful for the people I get to work with that can help me make things like this happen. Funding has always been a real big deal for us. Because we're a nonprofit, maybe most of the people that come into services are Medicaid funded. Medicaid doesn't come close to funding the services that we provide. I want to pay the people that are doing good work, good money. We have to have something where people that are working for us have a job that they feel good about coming to, and we have that environment, right? We're doing good work for good people, making good changes, but we got to be able to pay our people too. And Medicaid really comes nowhere close to meeting that. So often we rely on grants. So sometimes we can get some federal grants to help us do certain projects and certain things. The state will provide us some grant funding, and historically it was like, it's going to cost us this much to provide these services to the 350 people we serve each year. And Medicaid is going to cover this much of the cost. And so the state would try to help us catch up the rest of that cost. And then, about 3 years ago, there was massive cuts in state funding. So the gulf in those costs were extreme. There's really big gulf. There's $100,000 cost every year that we're kind of trying to figure out how we're going to do this thing.
Right.
And the cuts have continued. So Medicaid rates will increase sometimes, and they have increased a little bit. But again, the cost to provide the services is just way more than the reimbursement we're going to get from any kind of Medicaid, self-pay, or insurance, right. Because we're a community nonprofit. And so we have to fill those gaps up in some other ways. We provide services to unfunded or underfunded people most often. And then there's services that I, the executive director, it's just a no-brainer for me that I'm going to go into the Department of Juvenile Justice and talk with those kids when they invite me in. It's a no-brainer. I'm going to go into the high schools and talk with the kiddos every time they'll let me in there. There's some information they need to know, and I can give them to them. And there's a lot of services that we provide that there's just no way for us to get reimbursed for. And I don't care. It's about doing the services first. We'll worry about, the money, it's going to have to take care of itself. But This is one of the ways that we can kind of, let the community know, hey, this is what we offer, who we are, how we're doing services, the changes that we're making. And that people can help us provide these services to our communities.
And I love to see that. I want to see more community involvement in these things. I mean, federal grants, state grants, they're great. Unfortunately, everybody's broke, right? The state's broke. It's got no more money. It's, $1 billion deficits. The federal government's $37 trillion in debt. I mean, we're going to have to start getting used to taking care of ourselves. And kind of from my own libertarian perspective, I think that's the way it should be to begin with. I think we became dependent on a lot of these things that we shouldn't have. And now, those chickens are coming home to roost, but the problem is still there. And that means that the community needs to come together and step up. And that's why I applaud any organization that is looking to get more funds directly from people, from organizations, from folks in their communities, instead of, looking for the handout from whichever Uncle Sugar you want to call it, the state, the feds, whoever. That's what we need to do. And as a community, we need to care about that. Regardless of political affiliation, blah, 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 none of that matters. We're a community. If we need to take care of ourselves in our community, we need to work together. And that's why I think organizations like yours, and especially those who are now looking to the community to say, look, state funds gone, federal funds drying up, whatever's happening, we know more of that stuff is probably going to go away. Then how do we continue to serve these people who, unless they get treated, will be out in the communities, having problems in the communities, and whether, like I said, whether it's homelessness or something even more, problematic down the road, we as a community owe it to ourselves, to our families, to our neighbors, to try and help pull these things together and to help support these causes.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Mandy, you look like you want to say something. Mandy looks like you.
Well, when you say, another thing that we're doing this for, when you say these people, we want the community to have an opportunity to, like you said, support this organization and what we do, because these people are our children, our parents, our wives, and our significant others, people that we've cared about. So it's very, mental illness and addiction affects almost everybody's life in one way or another. If it's not us directly, it's someone that we've cared about deeply. And so this is an opportunity, regardless of whether you have addiction or mental illness, to at least support and make a difference.
Right. No, I agree. Brian in the chat room says these people live among us, so they are our concern. Right. I mean, they live among us. They are our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, our family members. Somebody is dealing with these issues, and we can't just say that's somebody else's problem. Walk it off or rub some dirt on it and get on with your life. Because some people just can't. Some people can. Some people can gut through it. Some people can't. They just don't have the tools. Right. They don't have the tools. The tools and the talent to get to that point. So they need some help. And that's what you guys are hoping to do. Yep. All right. And somebody asked a question earlier in the chat room, here's David. David says, what's the number one problem you guys are seeing with your clients, with your patients? Is there a number one problem? Is there a stressor? Is there a what's the number one issue? Maybe you guys can both comment on it. I think that's an interesting question. That's why I saved it. What's the number one issue that you're seeing? And I think Charles mentioned anxiety, which one of my daughters suffers from severe anxiety. So I kind of feel some of that, but Mandy, from your perspective here.
Yeah, Charlie touched on it. It's, not having enough internal resources to deal with people's internal world, whether that's depression, anxiety, not feeling safe, feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed. They're lacking the ability to be okay and on the inside, right? So they're reaching for things outside of themselves to do that. And until they have enough resources or tools to do it internally, there's going to be a struggle.
And that's what you guys try and do. I mean, again, somebody said, well, there's no cure. Well, no, but there are mechanisms and coping mechanisms. I mean, you may be suffering from this for your entire life, but at least you'll now have the tools and the mechanisms, right, Charlie, to be able to pull all this together and live a normal life, because now you have the habit force. Now you have the tools. Now you have the plan in front of you of, if this happens, then, if X happens, then I can do this. If Y happens, I can do this. Right. That's what you guys are trying to do. Equip them.
Sure. I think for maybe what the listener was asking about is what's maybe the number one drug of abuse that we might see show up, or, the most significant problems. And, the alcohol remains the number one killer over time throughout the nation, and certainly in Alaska. As far as drugs of abuse, alcohol is the most prevalent substance that causes problems in people's life. There's some that seem to be more explosive, and we know about those, right? Opiates come in whatever forms they come in. Fentanyl is in everything today. I mean, it's killing a lot of people because people are using meth or they're using whatever, and fentanyl is just kind of ending up in a lot of things. And so people have a lot of accidental overdoses. So even though, opiates were gained a ton of popularity here as far as popularity goes in 2010, 2012, that kind of area, as soon as they got a lot of pressure, the substance user would kind of switch to meth. So we've seen different things in our community come up and go down. Trank is a drug that is showing up across the nation. It's showing up here in small amounts, but that's really a fentanyl and high-powered sedative. I don't know why you would love to combine those two, but apparently that's the thing people like to do.
Right.
But as far as drugs of abuse, alcohol continues to be kind of the number one killer. Problematically, what we certainly get people with, developing cannabis use disorders, alcohol problems, stimulants, opiates. We'll work with and see all of those things regularly. But to the point we were talking about, there is almost always some kind of internal distress that this substance use is really a symptom of something else.
Right.
Alcohol problems is a symptom of some kind of internal distress. Right. Quickly, I'll say, I get, with this powerful nervous system work that we do, I get people that come in. Person I'm thinking of now, she comes in, she's trying to be a mom and a wife, and she knows she has some stuff from earlier in her life that she has never managed. And she's smoking dabs all day trying to manage that stuff. And she's like, I can't be a mom and a wife and run a business and do this. And she can't get out of this trap that she's found herself in.
Right.
So she came in and we do this, this powerful nervous system work. And within 3 to 4 months, so we take screeners. We say, where are we at? Where are your symptoms at? Let's get a baseline. And one of the screeners that we often take with people is a PTSD screener. I know we use the word trauma and people think certain things, but trauma is really, as we pile unprocessed events on top of each other, if we don't do anything with them and they stay stuck kind of in our nervous system, that starts to show up for people. And those traumas can be, challenging events that occurred in our childhood. My family, there was a lot of substance use and violence, and that's not really great for kids to hang around with. And then we got you can't say nothing about it. They're like, I'll give you something to cry about. So we're like, never mind, there's no problems here. And this stuff just stays stuck.
Right.
So we do these screeners, and I regularly work with people that score, 50, 55, 60, where if you score 33 or more, it's very probably PTSD diagnosis. So they're clearly meet it. And within 3 to 4 months, we'll take those screeners again, and they're scoring 10s and 12s. Literally, people that meet criteria for PTSD, they come in, we do this work together between 3 and 4 months. They no longer meet criteria for PTSD. A 1-year follow-up, they score 4 on that thing. It is lasting and it is powerful. And then 3 months in, I'm like, hey, how's that weed thing going? And she's like, you know what? I'm hardly smoking at all anymore.
Right.
So when the nervous system cannot be activated all the time, then we can make some decisions and not have to calm that thing with substances.
Well, we need to understand it. We need to work on it. And that's not even to get into the facts that somebody just mentioned, RFK talking about the chemicals in food and brain imbalances. And we're seeing a lot of that, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that, but we need to deal not necessarily with the causation right now, because that's a bigger issue. We just need to deal with the people who are dealing with it right now. So that's what you guys at Cook Inlet Counselling are doing. Again, the Gala event is going to be on October the 18th. At down in the in the Lone Moose Lodge. You can get some limited tickets right now, appetizers, drinks, games, entertainment, live music, auctions, and more, all to help support Cook Inlet Counselling. And we'll have you back on one more time right before the event comes on, just to kind of remind people that this kind of stuff, and you guys are doing good work out there. I mean, I think we can highlight this. This is not necessarily an exciting topic probably for a lot of the listeners because they're looking for some kind of hard-hitting political commentary, but this is our day-to-day life, folks. This is people, again, as Brian said, these are our friends. These are people who are around us, and maybe you're suffering from it and you just have gutted through it and you're still miserable. Well, there's things that can be done with that. So go out and check it out, cookinletcounseling.com. Charlie Simmons, Mandy Hanson, thank you both for coming on board and joining us this morning. We really appreciate you guys being part of it. We appreciate you giving us the intel.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right. You guys hold the line here for 1 second here as we finish up. We're going to go to break, folks. Don't go anywhere. We will be back with more in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. That's what we try and do. Always bringing something together. We're always trying to bring the community together in one way or the other. Even when we seem to be dividing the community. I don't know how that works, but we're trying one way or the other. We're trying to make people think. All right, we got more coming up. Don't go anywhere. Hour 2 is dead ahead as well. We got Bernadette Wilson joining us, candidate for governor. We'll be back with more and my follow-up right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, one final bite at the apple here with Charlie and Mandy, just because, is there something that I didn't mention, something that we didn't talk about, something that we should have, but we didn't? Let's start off with Charlie there. Did we miss anything, Charlie?
I think we've done a pretty good job, Michael. Maybe reiterate, our substance use, mental health concerns in our community. They're not going anywhere, and we just want to provide a service to our community where anybody can walk in the door and be seen. Of course, adults, I would say we have quite a bit of focus on youth. It's a problem in our community that there's not a lot of access for youth to get into treatment, and we make that really readily available. If we have a youth in trouble that walks in the door, we have an application packet that's pretty easy. You can get it at cookinletcounseling.org. You can fill that out there, or you can just come in the office, 10200 Kenai Spur Highway, and grab a packet there. We make it real easy. It's not a lot of information we're asking for, just some background. If you're a youth or have a youth that's kind of in trouble, fill that out and bring that in, and we get people rolling right away. We don't have a long wait list. We always get people, especially youth, who I'll see you the next week. Like, it's not, we don't want people out there just floundering when they're looking for help. So we make a lot of effort to do that. I think that is pretty important. And that, the services we're just trying to provide to people, regardless of their source of income, and then the importance of our community helping us do that.
Yeah, I think it's important. Mandy, your final bite. I mean, anything we didn't cover, or if there's something you wish we'd said or talked about, or something you think people need to hear. It's just you and me and 60 of our closest friends on the internet right now, and however many thousands of people watch the podcast later. So,
no, I think we covered it all. Thank you so much for having us, and look forward to talking again. And we'll probably think of a lot more things to say as soon as we're done.
Yeah, no, it's called delayed intelligence. I suffer from it. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you again coming on, and thank you for the work you do. Kim just said it's a much needed conversation. I agree. I think it's something that, we need to, that we need to work at. And like I said, this is a much bigger issue, and whether it's the chemicals in our food that's helping to exacerbate the situation, or environment, technology where we're disconnecting from each other, or whatever it is, there's plenty of causality in everything that we're dealing with. But what we need to focus on here, what these guys are focusing on, is trying to help people, give them the tools to be able to deal with all of that issues. And, we should deal with it, because everybody deserves to live a life where they can at least be comfortable in their own skin, and not be trying to numb themselves at every moment. And that's a huge problem, I think, in this country. So, all right. Well, Charlie and Mandy, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us today. Again, Cook Inlet Counselling.org is the website. If you haven't been there, go over there, check it out, see everything that they offer. Charlie Simmons, Mandy Hanson, thank you so much for coming on board, and thanks for what you do.
Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate you both. Appreciate you both being part of it today. All right. Well, let's get to it here. Let's continue. I mean, again, it's not necessarily even I hate to say sexy issue, but it's not an issue that I think, a lot of our listeners are probably were tuning into to jump on board with, but God, it's important. I mean, it really is. This is some, like I said, I have a daughter that suffers from some severe anxiety, and I see the quality of her life is not where it needs to be. Right. And I don't understand it, because although we all get anxious sometimes, I don't understand it to that level. And, we try, but I just want to be able to give people around us the best tools that they can have to be able to deal with that and to live a normal life. I mean, I'm not saying perfect, not saying they're always happy, la, la, la. I'm just saying to live a normal life. It's man, it's a problem. It's a problem for sure. All right. Let me see what else, see if you guys have been talking about everything else, chemical imbalances. I'm sorry, Kim, I did not catch that question on the way through. Is there a place in Fairbanks that offers the same quality services? I'll send an email to Mandy right now, and see if I can get that follow-up question. Let me see here. Follow-up question from the chat room. The chat room, is there an org in Fairbanks that offers similar services? All right. Thanks, Kim. I'll see if we get an answer here this morning as we go through here. I just sent an email over to Amanda on that as well. Okay. And yeah, I mean, look, there's all kinds of problems here. There's all kinds of reasons that these things can get straightened through. Hi, how are you? Welcome back to the program. Should I play the, yes, I will.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Well, and I played the same one. That's okay. Sorry, this is such an interesting topic to me because, again, I think it has such far-reaching ramifications, right? I mean, the homelessness issue, obviously, to me, is one of the more visible signs of this, But we could get into the issues of, school shootings and other issues of violence and things like that. Now, again, most people who have mental health issues are not violent, but though obviously there's the outliers, right? So we have that as well. But unless we address it, unless we pull it together and give them not just drugs, right? We don't want to substitute one dependency for another. I'm dabbing every day. I'm taking meth. I'm doing heroin. I'm drinking alcohol. But we don't want to substitute that for Prozac or whatever I don't know. Yeah, just the name that I pulled out of the air. We don't want to substitute one for the other. Giving them tools to deal with that issue, with the anxiety or past traumas or whatever else, we really need to be able to unpack that. And because, again, it has such a ripple effect on society. And I know we're kind of getting into the deep end of the philosophical pool here, but I mean, it's the truth. If we've got issues of if the homelessness, if the, any kind of violence or, broken homes or everything else comes back to that. That is a, we just can't medicate it away. We just can't medicate it away. We've got to find ways, physical and mental tools to deal with those kind of things. Leela in the chat room just said, normalizing chemical control of our brains is making society worse. Again, saying what I basically similar to what I just said. You can't substitute Prozac for alcohol or whatever, SSRI or, and of course now we're finding that many of these mental health medications have pretty vicious side effects, for, long-term side effects. She says, normalizing chemical control of our brains is just making society worse. And your antidepressants teach your kids that a pill or some other drug is the answer to what used to be ordinary feelings. Yes, some people need help. They're far fewer than mental health advocates want us to believe. Remember what pays their salaries. And I'm sure that there is some component of that. But again, we all know somebody in our life who is suffering from depression, anxiety, fill out the checklist. So yeah, maybe some of that's learned, but what we need people who can teach those coping techniques, I guess I should say, coping techniques. And we just need to stop, we need to work through that. We need to work through that. All right. Well, coming up, sorry, I see it. The problem is I see it it's like the hub of a lot of the problems that we have in our country is this, kind of this mental health issue that we're dealing with. And whether it's exacerbated by technology or drugs or whatever, we got to find a way to deal with it. We got to find a way to deal with it. All right. We are coming up here. I need help. I'm addicted to coffee. I'm with you, Chris. I think that's a common addiction. I don't think it's necessarily dangerous, but just don't drink, don't drink 2 pots a day. Let's do that. All right. Bernadette Wilson is going to be coming up in hour 2. We're going to dive into it with her. We're going to get into some heavy questions today. And we're going to figure out where we need to go and see what we can do to get those questions answered about things like the state budget and more. That's all coming up in hour 2. Tomorrow on the program, Dr. John Lott. That's right. Dr. John Lott will be joining us, and we're going to talk with him about the latest in the shootings, the writings of the Minnesota shooter, which include discussions about things like gun-free zones and more. There's some crazy stuff coming out in the manifestos and some of the other things we're seeing. So that's all going to be coming up. That's all going to be coming up in hour 1 of the big show for tomorrow for Firearms Friday. Meanwhile, Bernadette Wilson is our guest coming up. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Okay. All right. I guess we need to move off from that topic and move on to something new. Let's hand-waving freak-outery. Let's see. Hand-waving freak-outery has some interesting observations on that topic. Which topic? The manifestos or the mental health? Or both? I don't know. Melissa says we should talk about the outside money being thrown into a local election in Fairbanks, a local election for school board and assembly. Why does Washington care about our local races? Well, I'll tell you for nothing. Grassroots. Yeah, that's what they want. Grassroots and more. All right. The shooter. Okay. I'll take a look at that, Brian. Thank you. All right. Turn that off. Let's get things ready for Bernadette here. Let me make sure that I got Make sure I got all my ducks in a row. We're going to have, there we go. Got my questions lined up. I actually sent the questions. I don't normally do that. I'm not the guy that says, here's a list of questions we're going to discuss. But because I want the candidates to be prepared to have answers and not say, well, I have to get back to you on that. I've started to send my candidates a list of questions. And those questions include, what is your plan for a long-term state fiscal plan? What are you going to do about the potential $2 billion shortfall next year because of oil pricing? What are your thoughts on the education funding task force? And is education funding that important? What are you doing, or have you even considered the mismanagement of the Permanent Fund Corporation? And the biggest question of all, of course, is all the things that we keep talking about. How do we pay for it all? Those are all, I think those are important, and they're generic, but they give them a way to, they give them enough rope to hang themselves, I guess. That's what I'm saying. Sourdough Seal says, the outside interest investing money into a local election? I'm shocked again. Yeah, no. And that's the thing. Why is somebody in Washington State injecting money into the local school board election? Yeah. Anthony says, it's not a bad idea. That way, if you ask a question and they waffle on it, they're obfuscating on purpose. It's a 4D chess move. 5D. I'm working towards 5D, Anthony. That's what I'm working towards. Oh, my God. Brian just said one of the questions should be, are you now or have you ever been a member of a communist organization? Oh, man. Oh, that's some great stuff. All right. I see that Bernadette has entered the green room, but we got no video, no audio yet. So we got about 2.5 minutes. We could check in with her real quick to make sure her stuff's all working once she gets it up and running, before we get too far along. Wait, we got audio, but no video. Let's check in. Let's check in with Bernadette real quick. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I've got no video. So I don't know if you have to. It says your camera's turned off.
And I'm trying to figure that out right now.
Okay. All right. Well, we got your audio, if nothing else. But yep, there you go. Now something's turned on. I see that the icons changed there. So you keep working on that, and I will put you back in the green room here, and we'll figure this out here in just a second. You could always rejoin, Bernadette, if you need to, real quick. Sometimes that fixes it. But usually at the beginning of when you join, it gives you the option of which camera do you want to use and which microphone do you want to use. And sometimes going back there helps that. So, all right. MD has a 3D printer, so the 5D pieces are in production. That is true. I do. Yeah, a 3D printer is one of the coolest things. If you haven't done that yet, if you haven't tried that out, it's a super cool hobby, and you should go check it out. It's a lot of fun. All right. I think I'm all caught up on everything that's going on here this morning, but if I missed anything important, you guys will let me know. You guys will let me know for sure. And Sourdough Steel says he loves his 3D printer. Yeah. I mean, it's just so much fun. Do you use resin, or do you use, do you love resin, or do you use filament? There's a couple different kinds of printers that you can use there. It's so cool. All right. Well, that's it. Well, I mean, I don't have any. I didn't really, there's some news stories out there, but I really have. Did you see this video? We're going to talk about this tomorrow. Did you see the video of the brawl at the state fair, where apparently a man with a gun they got in some kind of argument and somebody drew a gun. And I'm like, at what point does it make sense to, anyway, we're gonna break down the story a little bit tomorrow. But yeah, quite honestly, there was some thuggery going on there. There was some thuggery going on. But we'll watch that and go over that tomorrow and give you a little bit more of a breakdown on that. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Bernadette Wilson's our guest. We'll continue here in just a moment. Let's go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and thank you for coming on board with us today. Hour 2 of the big show for Thursday. We just finished up talking about mental health, and we had some discussions with the folks over there at Cook Inlet Counselling. And I don't think everybody's going to agree on solutions or, causation or anything else, but I think it was a good conversation. And if you missed it, you should go back and listen to it. And you can find that on the podcast, wherever you find good podcasts, or you can go back and watch a replay on Facebook or YouTube or Rumble. Anyway, we are now into hour 2, and joining us this morning is our candidate, one of our candidates for governor here in this whole slew. What does this make, 27? I can't remember. Bernadette, though, she actually is one of the first people to throw her hat in the ring on this in this big race. Bernadette Wilson joins us this morning to talk about the state of the state and where we're going and what's happening and everything else. And she joins us. She joins us right now. Good morning, Bernadette. How are you?
Good to be with you this morning.
Well, thanks for coming on board and being part of it with us. The race just keeps getting hotter and heavier, right? More and more people. Pretty soon you're going to have a football team out there to be able to do what you need to do. Let's talk. What's happened since we talked with you last? Things have been kind of changing. The landscape is changing. We've got the big beautiful bill in. We got more challenges for Alaska. The new announcements about oil pricing and everything else. What are you hearing out on the street, Bernadette, as you go around as a candidate for governor?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say to your comment about pretty soon we'll have a football team. I've been joking with people that if anybody else gets into this race, we'll be showing up debates and at forums, and there will be more candidates up on stage than there will be people in the audience. Right. We are officially the majority, even at events that are intended to be for the public. So anyhow. It's been a great time. We have been, as you know, running around this state, incredibly busy. We just spent 7 days out at the state fair, where we were at the state fair the minute that fair opened, and we were there until 10 p.m. at night. We were in Ketchikan since we last spoke. We were in Ketchikan for Blueberry Festival. Got back into Anchorage at, 11:30 that night. I think I got to bed at midnight. Got up at 3:30 the next morning to drive to Valdez for Gold Rush days. So we've been all over crisscrossing the state. But what's really interesting is people talk to me, even out at the state fair. I think there's 2 things that stick out in my mind. The first thing that sticks out to me is just how many people are paying attention this early on in the game. How many people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I've seen your social media stuff. I've been watching the campaign, and they're very eager to talk to you. I'm not talking like in the bubble Republicans that are, following talk radio every day of the week, right? These are people that are running their businesses, they're getting their kids to school. And so it's really refreshing to see that there is some level of interest there. The second thing that surprises me is, the number one issue that I get asked about, everybody, it does not matter. I've been asked this by Democrats, Republicans, independents, hands down, everybody wants to come up and talk to me about trawling.
Trawling, yeah. It's a huge issue.
It is absolutely a huge issue. I knew that trawling, of course, was a big issue. But that is the first thing out of people's mouths when they come up to you. That's what they want to talk to you about. They want to talk to you about fishing and the issues that are going on within fishing in the state of Alaska. So that has been a refreshing surprise. And then the permanent fund, for us going 10 years now without paying out a statutory permanent fund, the permanent fund is still very much on the top of people's minds. I get asked those two questions even more so than I do education. Long before we start ever talking taxes of any sort or anything like that, those are the two issues that people bring up to me the absolute most. So it's been great being out on the campaign trail and seeing everybody. There's nothing, Michael, there is a whole new level of campaigning when you are standing in line for the Ferris wheel with your daughter holding a bag of cotton candy and someone's like, hey, by the way, about that trawling issue. There you are. So
no, well, we'll get into that for sure today, because I think that, again, having now moved down onto the Kenai Peninsula, I'm much more aware. I'm closer to the issue, and I need to get more up to speed on it. But I know that it has become more and more of a problem, especially with the things we've seen happen on the Kenai and the disappearance of a lot of the king salmon production and everything else. It's a real issue. And so we definitely need to get into that. But Bernadette, I want to start off first and foremost with with a question about an overarching plan. We're in a crisis, and I know that a lot of politicians don't want to talk about it. I know that Stedman and company, they mentioned it during the last session, but then during one of the press conferences, Stedman's like, well, I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on, because that's the future, because I don't want to focus on, the future, because even according to the governor's best estimates, $1.7 billion in deficit on average over the next 10 years. And now we've got even a bigger problem this upcoming year, which we'll get into here in a second. But I'm asking this question of every gubernatorial candidate. We need a long-term fiscal plan. And I know you've talked about some things like zero-based budgeting and other things, but can you articulate your fiscal plan for the state of Alaska to the listeners? What is your, first of all, do we need a long-term fiscal plan? That's a loaded question. And then can you articulate what it is from the Bernadette Wilson perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is, yes, you have to have a long-term fiscal plan. The stability of this state is at risk if you do not have a long-term fiscal plan. That's the first thing. The second thing is, when people talk about a long-term fiscal plan, even those that acknowledge that we need to have a long-term fiscal plan, they want to start the conversation with where the state is at today and where we're at given the spending that we have today, given the way that we budget today. The first thing right out of the gate is, if you're going to have a long-term fiscal plan, you cannot continue to do things the way they have been. It is impossible. And maybe there's other candidates out there that can find a way. I don't know. But in my view, it is impossible for the state to have a long-term fiscal plan if we are going to continue to spend the way that we are, and if we are going to continue to budget the way that we are, and if we are going to continue to have the same size economies and same type of economies that we currently have right now. Those three things right out of the gate have to change if you're going to have a long-term fiscal plan. Otherwise, if you take the estimated $1.7 billion deficit, you take the spending that we have, you take the budget that we have, your only way to get around that is to say, well, we got to have new taxes. I'm not going to support a statewide income tax. I won't do it. You're not going to find me supporting a statewide sales tax. I absolutely will not do it. So if anybody is coming to me saying, well, your statewide fiscal plan needs to include taxes, you're out of your mind. I won't do it. So first thing is right out of the gate, when we look at the deficit that we have, because we know that anytime you have a strong fiscal conversation, you have to go back and you have to ask, okay, what we're spending, is what we're spending necessary? If you're revisiting your budget for your household, you go back and you say, okay, do we really need to be eating out as often as we are? There are estimates, we've had several years in the past, any number of studies that show that Alaska's spending is roughly double what the national average is per capita. Roughly double what that national average is. So when we start, we've got to have a conversation there. I find it very interesting that when the governor hired a particular individual to come into the state of Alaska and assess where the state could have cuts and where perhaps we had bloat in our budget, that individual gave those ideas, said, hey, here's what I see, here's where it's at, and then was fired from her job with the state of Alaska. She's now over CFO of the Kennedy Center and finding the fat there. But step number one is you need to come in and you need to doge this state, for lack of a better description. If that's the terminology that is hot these days, then that's essentially what I would say we need to do. We need to come in and we need to look at our spending. Michael, you remember back, I mean, what was it, early 2000s? We had bipartisan coalition in the Senate, and everybody got along great. You know, they got done with their session in 90 days and we didn't have all the tension. Well, the reason that was very largely the case is because if you had a favorite department in state government, if you had a pet project, we added spending to our budget like crazy. And now we're proud of ourselves. Well, we haven't increased the budget, or we haven't done this, or we've done that. You're telling me that those budgets that we had those years ago and the budgets that we had under Walker and everything else were trimmed down and as slim as they could get? I don't buy it. I just simply don't buy it.
Right. Well, and I think this is good news. I mean, this is what people obviously listening to this program want to hear, but I do want to get down into the particulars a little bit, because there is, I'm trying to figure out, how do you cut $1.7 billion out of a budget without causing an economy crisis? Because again, I mean, this is, we didn't get here in one fell swoop. We're not going, I don't think we're likely to get out of it in one fell swoop. There's got to be some kind of ease in on this. And unfortunately, we've only got $3 billion in the CBR. So we don't have a lot of time to cover this. Even if we got it down to 1.5 billion, that's only 2 years worth of savings to be able to cover it and make a balanced budget. So, I mean, we have the fiscal policy working group plan, which included, cuts. It included some new oil taxes or changes to the oil tax structure. It included a 2.5% or 3% sales tax. It included a lot of these things, but it was like, it has to be all encompassing, and it can't happen overnight. So I don't know how you cut I'm all for cutting, but how do you cut $1.7 billion out of a budget to balance it with what they're taking in and not crash the rest of the economy?
Well, that's not the whole picture, though. That's just the first part, right? So we've discussed the first part, that you've got to get in, you've got to doge the state budget, you've got to figure out where those cuts are, absolutely, and find out where the fat is. The second step to that is you've got to increase, when you take the richest state in the country, okay, the largest land mass out of any of them, 2.5 times the size, by the way, with forestry that is all over the place, and we'll get to that in a minute. But then you also look at oil development and the amount of oil that we could increase coming through that pipeline. That's the second thing. We need to increase the output in the production that is going on in this state when it comes to our resources. As many people know, I own a garbage company. I'm almost in my 10th year of owning a garbage company. And the first thing that you learn very quickly in the garbage business is your profit margin is so incredibly small on each individual account that in order to scale, you have to have a significant amount of customers just to get up and going. Okay. When we're looking at our oil production and people say, well, oil is down and we're only making X amount of dollars a barrel today and X amount of dollars tomorrow. Well, you got to get more oil flowing through that pipeline. You've got to get resources and production going in this state. When you take the state, there is no reason, Michael, no reason at all. When you take a state that has the resources that we have with minerals and with oil, and yet we are in the budget situation that we are, this state ought to be flush with money. So that's the second thing, is we need to look at what production is happening on the oil side so that we can scale this a little bit better. When you look at oil, as we know, big state portion of the state's revenue is from oil. But the other thing is we need to look at diversifying our economy. I don't know if you can pinpoint me or someone can tell me at exactly what point did this state give up on our timber and on our forest industry. That's ridiculous. We've got more trees growing in this damn state than I think anywhere in the country. Yet we've taken that entire opportunity and that entire economic benefit and we have written it off as though it's just a given. The state of Alaska isn't going to be in forestry anymore because, you know, we've had these regulations handed down. We've had this whatever handed down. All I've heard is excuses. When again, I look at the state and here you are 2.5 times the size of any other state and more forestry and acreage than places that are indeed producing their timber. I have still not yet heard a good explanation as to why that is. So diversifying the economy is a second component of that. So you talk about doging, you talk about increasing production, then you've got to look at diversifying the economy. The other part of that, as you mentioned, is when you look at zero-based budgeting, what we spend in one year may not necessarily be what we need to spend the following year. So people say, well, you know, you got $1.7 billion in cuts. But remember that a lot of that, when you're not doing zero-based budgeting, we have departments that are spending money that don't need to on any given year because they are worried that if they don't spend it, they're going to lose it. So we don't even know what number is being spent frivolously that wouldn't even be felt. Unless somebody has that number, I'm waiting to hear it. But I'll tell you, I have not been able to get a single legislator to answer me those questions or to be able to provide those numbers. And what I'm saying is someone doesn't have their story straight. We got to jump in and figure this out.
Bernadette Wilson is our guest. We're coming up on the break. We're going to continue with her here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We're going to be back with her here in just a minute. She's with us for the full hour. Don't forget, you can always come out and join us on Facebook as well. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show /live. Or on YouTube or on Rumble, wherever you need to find us. We'll be back with more in Bernadette Wilson right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Bernadette Wilson is our guest. We're in the commercial break right now, so we'll kind of change gears just a little bit and see what we can see with her here during the commercial break. Bernadette, so those were the two issues that you talked about as you went out amongst the common people at the state fair, was trawling and the PFD, which is surprising because I think, from my experience in dealing with folks and talking with folks, man, the PFD discussion is dead. I mean, it's like nobody wants to talk about it anymore. It's like it's an afterthought. And quite honestly, when that whole thing first came down, I thought that was going to wreck some careers. And it didn't. It only, I mean, it killed Bill Walker's, career, but it didn't. Nobody else. I mean, the legislature could have overridden it. They could have done anything, but nobody else's career got touched on that. And that's always shocked me that has not continued to be a big talking point. So it surprises me to hear that people are coming up and talking about it, because they've been pretty quiet for a while.
Yeah, I have been surprised at the level of passion on that issue, and people that are just so upset. But I think that, I think that we have looked at the permanent fund and thought, okay, well, it didn't cost anybody their job, so they must not care. But there's this interesting phenomenon. We see this in education as well, where people will say, yes, there's a problem with education, but it's not my kid's school, but it's not my child's teacher that is causing the illiteracy at this particular grade level. And so I think much with the legislature and the permanent fund, people see the legislature as a mess. They're frustrated over the permanent fund conversation, but they don't think that it's their legislator is the problem. It's not my legislator. And so I think that really holding individual legislators accountable, we really need to do a better job of that and highlighting for the public in specific districts. This is very specifically what your legislator says your district wants outside of election season. The only time that we hear an accountability conversation is during the election cycle, usually from the opponent. That's it.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of other accountability conversations going on.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And I think part of the problem is that we've fallen into the dichotomy, and we being the more conservative side of the aisle, we fell right into the trap that was laid for us about, making it a dichotomous decision between, do you want a PFD or do you want a tax? Because that was how it was portrayed to us. And the problem is, of course, that shouldn't be the answer. The PFD should have had first call. And it shouldn't be, do you want a PFD or if you want a tax? The question should have been, do you want a PFD? Do you want bloated government and a tax? And that's because that's what's happening. They're spending the PFD money on more government, but we fell into that. We had Republicans saying, well, do you want a PFD or you want a tax? And we fell right into it.
Well, and it's an absolutely false choice. It's like, the question of when did you stop beating your wife? Right. I mean, it's a totally false dichotomy. It's false. It's a false choice when that's why I say simultaneously, it's interesting to me. There are, as you well know, there are Republican legislators that do not want to have a conversation about the fiscal health of the state. There are Republican legislators who, let's just be very, very frank with each other, have zero interest in seeing any cuts to state government. They don't even want you to come in and look around, okay? But the same legislators that will say, oh my gosh, we can't pay out a permanent fund because we're broke. We are flat broke. They're the same legislators that in the House are passing a defined benefit package. They're the same legislators that say, yes, let's increase the BSA by $1,000+. And I'm sitting here saying, well, wait a minute, which one is it? Because You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Michael, you can't tell me the state of Alaska's broke. We've got a $1.7 billion deficit and all these things. And then simultaneously turn around and want to pass and not pay out a permanent fund. But then turn around and say, well, we'd like to see $1,000+ increase on education spending.
Hold on, Bernadette. We're about to rejoin. Let's get back to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're continuing now. Bernadette Wilson is our guest, candidate for governor. She just kind of laid out her aspirational look at, what we should do for a long-term fiscal plan. But what we need as well, Bernadette, is we need some short-term plans. Why? Well, because as Brad Keithley has articulated a couple times here on the show over the last few weeks, we're seeing a lot of these new numbers come out from the EIA and the IEA, which is the agencies that kind of watch oil production and pricing and things like that. And they're both predicting right now that by the end of the year that Saudi Arabia has ramped up their production and they've actually increased the speed at which they're going to deliver it. So by the end of the year, we will be seeing crude oil, is their projections, somewhere in the mid 40s to low 50s. That's for Brent. So ANS is a little higher. It might be in the low 50s to high 40s. But we're currently basing our budget on $66 a barrel for oil. And if oil does fall into the low 50s, we just went from a $1.7 billion deficit for next year to having $250 million deficit this year, plus a $2 billion plus deficit for next. So it's not just the long term. What you're talking about is kind of long-term solutions and how we do budgeting and everything else. What's your solution for the short term for next year? Because essentially the potential is somewhere between $2 and $2.4 billion in deficit for the coming fiscal year, which would include the supplemental budget for this year because we're going to fall short, et cetera, because we're at January, we're only going to be 6 months into the fiscal year. And if oil prices tank down into the 50s from 66, we've got some real issues. So what's the short-term solution? How do we prop that up to be able to get to a more long-term fiscal solution?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say, and one thing that we did not address in the previous segment, is that earnings reserve. And when you look at the permanent fund dividend right now, the permanent fund dividend, I mean, most states, the rest of the states envy Alaska and this pot of money that is sitting there, this investment portfolio. Okay. That investment portfolio has not been well managed. And, you know, I think you were the one who mentioned to me the last time when I was on your show that Brad Keithley had written up his article about how the permanent fund had performed compared to the S&P. And so when you look at that particular fund and how I'm going to say how poorly it is performing in perspective, okay? Somebody is going to be upset and try to take that comment out of context, I'm sure. But when you look at how the permanent fund and how our investments are performing, the reality is this: those investments those dollars could be much more wisely invested and could be working for us a lot harder than they are. There's no reason that those dollars should not be operating more for us. And part of that is when you look at the permanent fund board, one of the things that the governor has the ability to do is to appoint to that board and make sure that that board is not simply a bunch of best friend, frat club cronies, but individuals who've got a strong record that are going to say, yes, let's look at how and where our permanent fund is invested. So I just wanted to make sure that I brought that up. Okay. Because that's big.
Yeah, that's a huge, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, in a bit. But again, now we should, because yesterday, Tuesday, Brad was on the program and he dove even a little bit deeper and said, even if they just marked the permanent fund, not to the S&P 500, but just to their own passive benchmarks, they would be making more money. Right. And they're not. And we're spending almost $1 billion a year in management fees. $1 billion a year, 800 to 900 million a year in management fees. Whereas if we just pegged the permanent fund to the S&P 500, the value of the fund wouldn't be at 80 million; it'd be at 120 million, maybe even more. Even with the ups and downs. And like you said earlier, oil is a big part of our revenue scheme in this state, but it's only 20% now. It's no longer the 50, 60% that it used to be. Most of the money is coming from the earnings of the permanent fund. And so that is the goose that's feeding the rest of the state, the golden goose. And we have to manage it better. The governor is the one with sole control over the board. They don't even have to be approved or vetted by the Senate. You could just appoint the board members that would do the right thing in this regard.
Absolutely. And that's why I say that is a huge component when we look at the state, when we look at the deficit, when we look at the revenue. That's another piece that I have found myself quite frustrated with, because when people give, we were talking about the false choice between, well, do you want your permanent fund or do you want taxes? And we've seen so many people fall into that, but no one is having the hard conversation about, wait a minute, I say no one. You've been having this conversation. Brad Keithley has highlighted this, right? But in Juneau, legislators are not wanting to have the conversation, say, wait a minute, we have this huge investment here. And is the investment working for us at its maximum full capacity? It's not. The state of Alaska ought to be flush with money coming from that investment if it was being managed and invested properly. So that is a big portion of this that you can't ignore when we look at the deficit. You can't ignore it when we look at a short-term fiscal plan. You can't ignore it when we look at a long-term fiscal plan.
Right.
We've got to have that conversation.
No, I agree. But let's and I agree that that's an important component, especially of a long-term plan. But let's get back to the short-term plan. Again, you're governor, you're the newly appointed, you're the newly elected governor. And of course, this next year, you're not going to have to deal with it because this is still Dunleavy's baby. But if you were, and you were faced with a $2.4 billion, 2 to 2.4, I mean, what's the short-term fix, Bernadette? I mean, there's got to be a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term. And all we've ever done is focus on the short-term, it seems like. But we have to have a plan to come out of this. At the rate that we're going right now, we have to have a short-term plan that feeds into a long-term plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is this, I will say this up front because people aren't going to like it, but a short-term plan is going to hurt. You are going to have massive amounts of blood loss regardless of which way you go. But you're not going to be able to come in and say, all right, short-term plan is income tax or sales tax. We just got to get a new tax on the books. It's not going to work. You can't come in and say, all right, without that hurting, right? That's going to have a significant economic impact. You can't come in and say, all right, well, we're going to do all of these cuts without having a significant long-term impact. So either way, right out of the gate, know this, you're going to have a massive amount of blood loss. There will be casualties of the war, and it's going to hurt. But I will tell you, if I were the governor today and there were all of those issues, I would be sitting down every single department head and saying, here's the deal. You've got to come up with an X amount of percent of a cut. You got to go find me 3% across each department. You got to go find 4% across each department. There are individuals that have worked for this state and subsequently been fired who have told me, Bernadette, there should be no issue going to every department across the state and saying, hey, you got to go find me 3 or 4%. Are people not going to like it? No, they're not. They're going to whine and moan and everything else, but it's going to hurt. So pick your pain of which one it is. Because here's the thing, and I've had this conversation with Republicans that say, well, we just need a small sales tax. We just need a very, very small income tax. I'll tell you why that scares the crap out of me, Michael, because that tax, the minute that you open the door on that tax, they are going to take a mile. The minute that they can get that on the books and get that ball in motion, it is only a matter of time till it starts rolling down the hill and gaining in size and an impact. So I'm not willing to open the door on that. If it's going to hurt, no matter which way we go, I would much rather it hurt on the upfront and say, here's the deal. It's 1 year. This is the deficit we're dealing with. It is 1 year in front of you while we go figure out our investments of the permanent fund. It's 1 year while we figure out how in the heck we're going to beef up our production in this state. It's 1 year until we figure out how we're going to get to zero-based budgeting. And for that 1 year, you're probably going to bleed a little bit. But I can promise you this, as much as that would hurt for a 12-month cycle, it would not hurt nearly as badly as you implementing a new tax that could stick around for the next 10, 20, 30, and quite frankly, would probably never get repealed in this state.
Let me play devil's advocate for a minute, because again, we saw what happened when Donna Ardwin put together the whole fiscal plan for Dunleavy. He went out there, he got killed over it. Even Republicans, conservative Republic, even they would not uphold his vetoes. Even they would not uphold his fiscal plan where he cut. I mean, it was a mere 8% overall, I think, of the whole thing at the maximum. And in the end, they only wanted to cut, I think, $80 million out of it. Anyway, even then, even with your zero-based budgeting, even with, performance-based budgeting, even with whatever it is, You have to get 60 other yahoos to play ball with the governor to make it happen. And here's my fear. My fear is the permanent fund is going to be gone. I've already predicted that I think this is the last year we're going to get the permanent fund dividend, because next year with $2 billion plus in up for grabs in deficit, they'll take the whole thing. I mean, that's only $660 million for the $1,000 dividend. That's all it is. And that doesn't even get to halfway on the deficit. I think if we don't start getting ahead of this, we're going to end up with no PFD, and we're going to have taxes on top of it anyway. I personally, I don't like taxes, but I think that at this point, taxes are inevitable in this state because we don't have the political will. Now, again, as governor, you have a lot of power, but you've got to convince 60 other yahoos that this is the way to go.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit, right? You have 60 other, as you said, yahoos that you got to get on board. And it's interesting to me. This gets a little bit political in the weeds, but I know that your listeners will stay right on step with me on this. When you look at states, I like to use Florida. Okay, we're going to step outside of Alaska for a little bit. When you look at the state of Florida, you remember when Florida used to be a swing state, right? It used to be Florida was going to go red. Maybe it was going to go blue. Now Florida bleeds red. The Democrats can hardly win a school board race. And you'll see where I'm going with this in a second here. But Florida is so strong red. And like I said, I picked that one out because it's an easy one. But you have other states where you've got strong Republican majorities. This has not happened on accident. What Florida has done, what Florida's governor has done, is they've set up an independent expenditure or a super PAC, not for purposes of the governor getting reelected, but for purposes of ensuring that there is a policy-aligned majority in the legislature. And when we talk about how do you get 60 legislators on board, my view is this, and legislators past and present hate this, okay? I am not the favorite candidate of legislators. So if that's what someone's looking for, you'll probably want to go find another campaign because it's not me, all right? But the deal is this. Legislators right now have no fear of their governor. They have walked all over this governor. They have they've overridden his vetoes. He's given them his priorities. They don't care. They throw it out the window. It is as though we've got a bunch of unruly, quite frankly, spoiled brats sitting there demanding their fists. And the governor, and I'll use the analogy of a parent, has lost control of the classroom, right? Has lost control of the kids. When you set up a super PAC, the wisdom in, DeSantis having a super PAC, and again, that's just one example, you'll find multiple, but the wisdom there is that when the governor can sit down and say, here's the deal, you come get into my office, we're going to have a conversation. I just won this election by X amount of percent. And you are saying that your district doesn't want this and your district that. Well, here's the deal. We've got, pick your number, okay? 5 million, 10 million. Sitting in a super PAC, and I'm going to come into your district and I'm going to go have a conversation about this. Because here's what's interesting, and here's why I believe that would work. Right now, the minute that you criticize a Republican legislator in Juneau for not supporting a realistic spending cap, the minute that you criticize them for them being the reason that a statutory permanent fund wasn't paid out, the minute that you criticize them for not wanting to have a, short-term, mid-term, long-term fiscal plan, they all freak out. They all get so upset that, why are you attacking me? Why are you doing these things? The reality is they freak out because they know darn well that the minute we start talking about it, the minute that we get into their district, they start to feel the squeeze because they know that it's not what their district wanted. These legislators are kind of escaping by having complete disregard for the governor, disregard for the fiscal situation in the state of Alaska, because they know that they can go back to their district and they can act like everybody else is the problem and they're not the problem. The governor needs to have a super PAC to sit them down and say, here's the deal. We need to figure out how we're going to see eye to eye on this issue, because I don't want to have to spend the money to come into your district to have an accountability conversation and a transparency conversation. So yes, you are correct. The way that the state sits right now, you're absolutely spot on. Getting 60 people on board looks as though it would be nearly impossible. But that's because the way that we are going about it is all wrong right out of the gate.
All right, Bernadette Wilson is our guest. We're up against the break. We got more coming up. One final segment dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Bernadette Wilson, finishing up our discussions on the long-term, short-term fiscal plan.
Hey, I can see you.
That's, again, my fear here, Bernadette, is that that we won't have enough time to put, what you're talking about takes some time to do, and that we're just going to kind of be faced with this issue of the permanent fund's going to be gone next year before any new governor is even impaneled, I think, at this point. And that means then the next big pot of money that they're going to look at is, one, we can get back to this at the thing, but it's SJR 14, combining of the funds, or two, some form of taxation. And I mean, that's the only two readily available sources of money out there for them. And this is a crowd that will go with the path of least resistance. This is what they're going to do. They're not interested in cutting because somebody might get hurt on that. Everybody can shoulder the burden of a tax, but not everybody could afford losing their jobs because they work for the government or whatever. I mean, this is a big part of that problem.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And Republicans are just as much a part of the problem as the Democrats are. I agree with you on that. But I think that where there is a little bit of difference, or where I tend to dig my heels in, is, I was born and raised in this state. I was born in Kenai. My grandmother, was born in the village of Naknek. I have a family that has businesses, multiple businesses that have been around 40 and 50 years in this state. My great uncle, Governor Wally Hickles, served as governor twice in this state. I am not willing to concede on any of that. And if that is the hill that I die on and we keep fighting, then by God, we are going to keep fighting. And if we get drained because it's the same fight and we feel like, oh my gosh, nobody is on board, I'm going to keep fighting that fight. I am unwilling to take what this legislature, controlled by Democrats, in the House and in the Senate, saying, well, sorry, these are just your choices. This is just the situation. I'm sorry, but I do not have full faith and confidence that their creativity is where it should be. I don't have full faith and confidence that their priorities are correct. So I'm simply not willing to accept that. I think we need to dig in and we need to fight. And there are a lot of people who tell me, you know what, we're exhausted by it. The fight is over. My gosh, we can't get anybody on board. And they want to concede. I'm here to tell you, don't throw the towel in. We can't concede, because if you think it's bad today and you concede, think about how much worse it's going to be in 20 years. Because here's the thing, you could get your sales tax today. You could go get your sales tax. You could go increase the taxes on the oil companies. You could take the entire permanent fund away. Go do all of it. I challenge anybody, make me the case that you think that it's enough.
But that has always been one of my fears is, of course, when Brad has talked about this, and he advocated early on in the program that we should just have a flat tax. And I was like, great, except for the fact that they'll just spend it's Parkinson's principle for government, right? The government spending expands to consume all available money. That's exactly where we're at today. We do need a change. You're right, 100%. We need a change in the way we budget. We need a spending cap, a real spending cap, not a statutory, but a constitutional spending cap. We need those things because that controls and limits the size and scope of government. But, again, something's got to happen in the next 24 to 36 months, because the PFD's gone. And I'll be honest, once it's gone, I don't think it will ever come back. Even if we do finally get our fiscal house in order, I think it would be a very heavy lift to even return to a permanent fund at that point. That's the danger here.
Yeah, no, it would be a very heavy lift. It would be a heavy lift to undo an income tax. It would be a heavy lift to undo a statewide sales tax. All of it's going to be a heavy lift, which is why I say out of all of those, right, in the immediate, as we rush to figure out in the next 12 months what we're going to do, you also have to be careful that we're not dooming the state for the long-term fiscal plan. And you see people will fall into that trap of, okay, but I got to act now. And in their moment of rush and of haste, they don't think long-term. And so as we look at that short-term plan, I think what we have to do is say, all right, here's the thing. It is going to be a heavy lift to undo those things. What is going to cause the least amount of bleeding? I think to cause the least amount of bleeding, quite frankly, is to sit there and say, you know what? How close can we get to surviving and shutting down government? All right.
Right.
You all deal with it for 12 months, because if not, you're going to go battle a sales tax for the next 30.
Right. Well, and it's interesting, Harold, our resident expert troll here, he did throw out something that makes it very obvious that Alaska's got a problem. Per capita, state of Alaska employees, 245 per 10,000. Florida, which you were just highlighting, 82 employees for 10,000. So we've got nearly 3 times the number of employees that Florida does. We definitely have a bloat problem in this state. That will fix some of it, but I mean, again, this is a complex issue that's going to require a lot of work, and I hope you're. We got to jump back into it, but I hope you're ready for that, because it's going to require a lot of work. Here we go. Final segment, dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, continuing on, Bernadette Wilson's our guest. Bernadette, any final thoughts before I move on to my final questions here for the segment? I know we were just talking about the number of state employees. I mean, the bloat in the state. 3 times per capita state employees in Alaska versus Florida, which you were just highlighting and touting as a good example, and I agree. But it just shows how much bloat we have in the state. Final thoughts on that?
Yeah, what I'll say is this: for people who come to me and say, you know what, we have legislators who don't want to get on board. They don't want to support these things. They're not going to. You could give them all of the things that they want, give them every tax increase they want, give them all the new taxes they want, give them the permanent fund. Mark my words, your children and your grandchildren are going to go fight the exact same type of irresponsible legislator 30 and 40 years from now, and it won't be enough unless we are willing to face and feel the pain today. You're not going to solve this issue by saying, all right, well, we just got to go do all these things today because the legislature is the problem. That fight's not going to go away. No matter how worn out you are by it, it's not going away. Let's dig our heels in. Let's get this corrected right now. Right now, there's no better day than today to get started. So
let's talk about some of the cost sectors here in the state. And of course, education has been the number one issue for the last 18 months. We saw the $700 BSA increase. We know that they're coming back already. They've already said the quiet part out loud. They're coming back next year, this next session in January, for another bite. They want more. We know that they've talked about defined benefits with a, potentially upwards of $1 billion a year price tag. Again, where do you stand on these big spending issues when we're in the crisis that we're in right now?
I think that it's incredible that our charter schools, our private schools, our homeschool co-ops all outperform our public school system and yet cost a fraction of the price. When it comes to education, I've said this numerous times, it is time for us to fund students, not systems. And I'll tell you, if a private school or, like I say, I mentioned a charter school can educate our kids twice as good for half the cost. Now, those numbers are not accurate, okay? But you get the point. If they can do it for a fraction of the cost and get double the results, why on earth are we not giving families these options? If the state could save money, if the child could get a better education, why are we not having that conversation? You're right. Education is one of the biggest drivers of our state budget. We're spending astronomical amounts of money. I think the average across the state, I don't know, a year ago or so was about $18,000 per kid. That's ridiculous. So if we can give the option for those kids to go somewhere else, we need to be doing that. I mean, the state literally, people, I hear this, and you and I had this conversation. Boy, you got to go cut all this money out of the state budget. There's no way that's not going to hurt. That's going to hurt, man. We're going to have, our economy is going to have a complete recession if we do that. Yeah, but you don't know how much money you would save based off of how many kids would willingly leave the system because they'd love to go have another option. And so I'm a big believer. We can't keep funding this bureaucracy that's not going to work. And by the way, they can't even tell you what results we are getting for that amount of money. Are we going to be in the top 10% now? Are we going to be number one in reading? Are we going to be top 25%? I just want to know what the number is.
Are we going to move off the bottom is the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we going to move up one or two places? I mean, they can't even guarantee that. What about we've got about 3 minutes here. What about defined benefits? I know that that's going to be floated back again. Both Republicans and Democrats seem to be in favor of it in the Senate and parts of the House. What's your take on the defined benefits issue?
I absolutely do not support a return to defined benefit. I am not, I joke, tell people I'm only 25. And at the tender age of 25, I still remember the arguments when the state of Alaska transitioned away from a defined benefit plan. The state has billions of dollars of previous debt from an old defined benefit plan. I pushed back hard several years ago when the legislature wanted to pass a defined benefit bill. It had already passed out of the House and it was sitting in the Senate. I worked very hard to stop that bill when it was in the Senate. I still today do not support it. That was, 4 years ago or something like this. So no, I mean, you want to talk about the fiscal situation of this state. What better way to tank it than defined benefit?
Right.
Than returning to defined benefit.
Yeah, I mean, again, my big question that should be to every person running for office is, how do we pay for it? How do we pay? It's not puppies and rainbows. How do we pay for it? We got about 90 seconds here, Bernadette. I want to give you the final word here, your final pitch to people. Where do they find you? What's your next event? Give it to us.
Yes, absolutely. BernadetteForGovernor.com is our website, BernadetteForGovernor.com. If you go there, you can sign up to get our newsletters, to get our updates if you'd like. You, of course, can find us across all the social media platforms, Bernadette for Governor. Our Facebook page, if you do Facebook is a great place to go because we're updating there with regular videos and things. Constantly. I mean, it ends up being about a daily update there with things that we've got going on. And then we're very excited that on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, September 9th, 6:15 p.m. at Susitna Brewing out in Big Lake, I will be announcing my pick for Lieutenant Governor. And so I invite you, come out. Join us. It's not a fundraiser. If you want to hear what the campaign is doing, what we're about, I will address a whole number of issues at that event.
All right. Well, Bernadette, I can't wait to hear what you got to say. Thank you so much. Folks, we're out of time. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday. We'll see you then. Be kind, love one another, live well. Sorry, Bernadette, we're up against the break there, and I got your video here at the last minute. It's amazing. So I want to give you a final bite at the apple. Anything we didn't cover today or anything that you think we should be be aware of, give me the final bite at the apple here.
You know what? I really appreciate the time. And I think, my last sales pitch to people is, I know that right now it looks bleak and I understand that frustration. But by God, I think that I really and truly believe that we can pull through this. I do. I think that Alaskans have the grit and the determination. I don't think we've been going about it the right way. We need to get in there. We need to play hardball. I've heard other, candidates say, brag about how well they get along with other legislators and how we all just got to really work with each other. And I'll tell you, I've watched us for the last 20 years all work with each other. I've watched bipartisan coalitions come together and hold hands. And, isn't it great they all get along? And simultaneously, over the course of the last 20 years, I've watched the permanent fund get raided. I've watched education drop. We've watched the deficit grow. I would challenge anyone to say, you know what? The holding hands days are over. Maybe it's time for us to push back a little bit and not go with the, well, can we all just kind of get along type of message? We tried that. It's failed us. It's time to play hardball.
Yeah, no, we can't go along to get along. We tried to be statesmanlike. We've tried to be nice. We've tried not to call names. And I'm been encouraging my legislators and people that I know, you guys have got to start, stop pulling punches. Because that's how they get you. They let you go along. Well, I don't want to call out my colleague. I don't want to do. We've got to get we are up against the wall. We are up against the wall. Somebody said earlier in the chat room, somebody said, well, the state's not broke. The state is broke because we're spending more than we've taken in. And we continue to do that. Under Republicans and the teens, we spent $15 billion out of savings that we didn't have to because they refused to make the hard choices. This is a Republican problem. This is a Democratic problem. This is a politician problem. And until somebody calls whoa on the play and says, we can't keep doing this, nothing is going to change.
Well, and for people who say that the state is not broke, I mean, I have challenged the idea, is the state broke? But I'll tell you the reason I say that is because when you pull up with a brand new Ferrari, because after you just got back from your vacation in the Bahamas for the last month and your brand new Gucci bag in hand, and then you're telling me that you're broke and you can't pay your mortgage, I question, are you really broke? And so I have that concern with the state of Alaska as well. I don't know who made that comment, but whoever did, shout out to you, because I'm looking at the state of Alaska saying, all right, yeah, but how many pairs of Louis Vuittons have you shoved inside the closet? And how many Ferraris are sitting in the garage as you tell me that you can't do all these things? So maybe we are flat broke, but we need to have a conversation and go start digging and figuring out what we can do there. But the last thing I'll say is this also. I know there's a lot of people who've said, oh my gosh, we heard this with Dunleavy and we hear the whole thing, people run for office and it's all these empty promises. And there is a healthy amount of skepticism. And I will tell you, I agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. I understand the frustration. That's why I'm here. Because as I looked across the country and as I looked across Alaska, I recognized something. Donald Trump has been able to go in and shake up this country and turn it around. I mean, you talk about a short-term plan. Look at how much the president turned this country around in his first 90 days in office in a way that nobody thought was possible. He came from outside the system. He wasn't a so-called experienced bureaucrat. Okay, I'm so tired of hearing about, oh my gosh, but this person has the experience because they've been in government for so long. Right. Historically, those ones with all the experience have failed us. Nick Begich is doing a hell of a job in Congress. That guy came from outside the system. Wally Hickel was one of the best visionaries this state has ever seen. And that's what people tell me. That's not my words. That's other people. He was a business owner, an entrepreneur. He watched crap break and crumble in front of him, and then he built it up 1,000 times. So for those that are skeptical, I would challenge you, consider history, both past and present. And some of the ones that have indeed been able to come in, shake it up, and turn it around literally in a matter of a few months are not the ones that had all the so-called experience. They're the ones that came from outside the system. We need to consider that.
Bernadette Wilson, thank you so much for coming on board. Good to talk with you. Appreciate it. We'll catch you later.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.